Even though major depression affects more than 21 million Americans, many people have trouble understanding exactly how it affects someone and what causes it. One common misunderstanding is that depression only occurs when something bad happens to a person, like a death in the family or the loss of a job. While these events can trigger a depressive episode, oftentimes major depression develops in an individual without any preceding specific event. Let's examine the false notion that depression is simply a nasty case of the blues. Many studies show that depression is caused in part by an imbalance of the neurotransmitters in your brain. These neurotransmitters, namely serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine, influence our moods and help the brain transmit information, thoughts, and feelings. Research also suggests that the neurons in the brain of depressed people don't adapt and grow the same way that they do in non-depressed people. Furthermore, MRIs have revealed that there are physical differences between the brains of depressed and non-depressed people, but there's more research needed to strengthen these theories. These discoveries dispel the myth that depressed people should be able to force themselves to be happy. To correct these neurological and chemical brain glitches and get relief from their symptoms, people with major depression usually need to start and often stay with antidepressants and psychotherapy. That leads me to another myth. Major depression doesn't just go away on its own. Don't ever wait for this to happen. Untreated depression may lead to cognitive problems, memory loss, and even physical problems such as headaches and digestive disorder. And suicide is more likely if depression is left untreated. In fact, major depression is the top risk factor for suicide. When you are dealing with depression, everyday tasks can become hard to manage, and the stresses and pressures of work may seem too much to juggle. You may find you are slower at getting things done, and that it's harder to concentrate and organize your to-do list. You may have a harder time dealing with coworkers, participating in team tasks, and getting along with people. You may battle fatigue, aches and pains, and insomnia, and find that you're much more vulnerable to catching colds and the flu. You end up taking more sick days, and that can alienate coworkers too. Fortunately, there are things you can do to keep working at your best while coping with depression.
People who are depressed consistently say is, rather than feeling bad all the time, sad or low or whatever, they don't feel anything. That's usually when depression gets pretty bad, is you don't feel anything. You could go through a terribly sad experience. You could attend a funeral of someone you love, and you don't really feel much different than you would otherwise feel. And that's where this asymmetry argument that Benatar has come up with fails, because the fact is, in depression, you feel about as bad as it's possible for a human being to feel, but you can't actually feel these. People who are depressed actually become physically impervious, or at least more impervious to pain than the rest of us. Physical pain. And you don't feel this either. So it's not so much that these are imbalanced in depression. The early stages are you just feel this, but after a while this goes off the map as well. This goes first, but it's followed eventually by this. If this has value, so does this. And if this has value, so does this. The real absence of value is when you don't have any of these. That's severe depression. And that's something that Benatar simply doesn't take into consideration in his, I would say, almost infantilely simplistic depiction of the split between the positive and the negative in terms of human emotions and human feelings. Happiness, sadness, joy, sorrow, pain, pleasure, etc. Far, far, far too simplistic, and possibly an indication of a depressed mind, but I don't know. I can only go by my own experience. Thank you.
Depression affects all of us. It can strike anyone at any time.
1 in 5 employees are diagnosed with depression.
Suicide is the leading cause of death for males aged 10 to 49.
In Calgary, on average, 4 to 8 teenagers in every classroom are depressed.
Depression is highly treatable, but it has to be treated, and the sooner the treatment starts, the better the results.
What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for?
What are you waiting for?
What are you waiting for?
What are you waiting for?
Work together.
Let's defy depression.
Let's defy depression.
Let's defy depression.
Let's defy depression.